Whether the women like it or not, a lot of people getting their undies in a bundle over that comment. I'm joined right now by conservative strategist Allison Wynn, who raised millions of dollars as an Obama campaign fundraiser. Allison now voting for former President Trump, and Democratic strategist Melissa DeRosa, former chief of staff to Governor Andrew Cuomo. Great that we could have you on, ladies, especially as we're getting this fit in right between both campaigns and big rallies. But Melissa, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, abortion has made this a single issue vote for so many on both sides of the aisle. How much momentum are Democrats getting from this issue, especially as we listen to some of the comments made from Vice President Harris, a number of which have been fact-checked just in the few minutes that I've had to look?
There are three things that could put Kamala Harris over the top in this election. Women, which is abortion is their number one issue, her money advantage, and her ground game. And the way that you see her and her campaign leaning into this issue so heavily in the closing days tells you everything you need to know. In a lot of ways, Republicans were the dog that caught the car on this issue. For decades, they've been trying to overturn Roe v. Wade. They finally do it, and they find out it is a massive political liability. So I think if Kamala Harris prevails on Tuesday, she is going to have abortion and the overturning of Roe v. Wade to thank.
But do you think, just as a follow-up, do you think that some of the things that she said that have been proven to be factually wrong regarding what the Trump campaign, what a Trump win would do for America, is anybody really paying attention? Or is it a matter of, listen, I just don't want the government in my business?
No, look, I don't think it is people thinking that in a place like New York, you're going to have mandatory, tracking of your pregnancies. I think that to the extent that things like that are being talked about, it's being talked about at the state level in places like Texas. But I think it's also very important that people like you, because we don't have this on a lot of our news stations today, are actively fact-checking these things. But it is the overwhelming, don't take away something that has been mine, enshrined in the Constitution since the early 1970s. And oh, by the way, if you're going to take this from me, what else are you going to take from me? This was an affront to women, and you're seeing the backlash. We saw it in 2022 when there was the failure of that red wave, and I think you're going to see it again this year.
Yeah, it's just fear is a pandemic that this country has wrestled with far too long, and it's nice to get things straight and to know exactly what would change and what wouldn't. Allison, I'm going to ask you on the GOP side. Obviously, the focus has been around a lack of clarity from Vice President Harris, right, as to what she really believes about late-term abortions. Or do you think that there's something else that Republican women are more concerned about when it comes to health?
That's a great question. I think on both sides, there have been a lot of emotional issues, outrage issues. On the Democratic, obviously, it's reproductive rights and abortion. On the Republican side, it's the transgender. How dare they fund illegal migrants to get transgender? And you can fact check that. Actually, Kamala Harris supported that. And so there are outrage on both sides. And I think they do cancel each other out with the outrage. And then people now are looking kind of beyond the emotional and the outrage because the economy and with inflation, people aren't doing really well. So you really have to get back to that question that's been asked of Kamala Harris. Are we better now than where we were 4 years ago? And she's getting a little bit stronger with answering that question, but yet she hasn't gotten into her stride. I get it. I haven't been in the media except for the last 6 months, and I feel like I'm just starting to be more coherent with my message as a newly Republican voter. She's only been out really in the media circuit for like 3-4 months. And so I think she's doing a tremendous job. I don't think she can put it together to really fight Donald Trump because he's been in the media eyes since the 80s and the 90s, The Apprentice. He's been on The View like 17 times. He has that big political energy that people gravitate towards. And he can clearly talk about the economy. He can clearly talk about the safety, the violence against women with these illegal migrants. And I think at the end of the day, that's what women, middle-class women, all women want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you both make such good points. And I think that it's so weird. I was getting ready for the show today and I thought, man, it's history repeating itself. It's Donald Trump versus a woman for the election to the White House. And we're talking about what the differences are. Who is the better candidate? Mark Cuban coming out with the comment that he made, Melissa, about there are no smart, strong, intelligent women with former President Trump, and that immediately following the comment from President Biden saying that Trump supporters are garbage, and then the retraction from the press office. Do you think that Americans are paying attention to that, or is it just a distraction at this point?
It's interesting. I actually spent the last week in Georgia, and I was watching the local news there, and it was getting very little coverage of these issues that are dominating cable news right now. The front pages of the papers there, which is a critical swing state, weren't talking about this at all. That being said, it is unfortunate that the vice president was saddled with the baggage of President Biden and also of Mark Cuban in the closing days. I think she is trying to drive home a message of unity. I will be a president for all Americans, not just the Americans that I agree with, and drawing the contrast with Trump over divisiveness versus trying to move forward together. And the two of them undoubtedly screwed up this week. And I think that her distancing herself from the comments was an important thing to do. And we've got to try to push past all of this negativity and speak about what we're going to do for the American voters and stop insulting one another.
Yeah, and I think it would be nice if some women actually stood up and said something. And I think we saw some of that after both the president and Mark Cuban. It was like double whammy of insulting women's intelligence. But thank you both for being here. I always love having you both on, and I'm glad we were able to get you in because we're getting ready for another rally. Allison Wynn, Melissa DeRosa, thank you.